All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Author Story. I am your host, Alexander Lim, and we will be focusing on some things different from here on out on this channel. Yes, we will still be interviewing book authors and featuring their books, and at the same time, we will also be focusing on persons, not necessarily authors, who do have a story to tell. Hence our new motto, Authors and Stories That Matter. This episode's featured guest is Isabella Michon, and her column, Wagging Tails, Changing Lives One Tale at a Time, is something that she writes on her Facebook page. Isabella is an independent publicist and media consultant who is the president and founder of I Am Media Inc., has some 40 years worth of experience as a radio and TV producer, and has worked with several award-winning authors such as Deepak Chopra and Robert Thurman, as well as with such publishing companies as HarperCollins and Random House. She also holds workshops, two of which are how to promote your book to the top of the bestseller list and how to make $100,000 or more working from home. Sounds interesting. Okay, Isabella, welcome to Author Story. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for being our first guest in this expanded version of Author Story.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Alex. I really feel this is a privilege and an honor to be on your show. And I know you and I and Alvin, our producer, have worked very closely together for all these years, and you've featured many of my authors. So we thank you for, everything you've done to make a change and to keep transformation going in our lives.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's always good. It's always fun to do our share of however much we can do. Okay, so Isabella, first off, a little bit about yourself, or perhaps more relevantly with your career. What was your career path like?
Well, I think I've been very blessed. I think what's really important is I've always had a job that I've loved, and
Mm,
I've been doing what I've doing publicity, production, and doing things that I feel make a change where I can, send a message out there and I can help make, changes in people's lives. And so I think that's
right.
very important. And, actually having a degree in journalism has made a big difference too, because a lot of people don't even, they have a degree, but they follow a totally different track. So the
Right.
fact that I was able to springboard off something and to do something I love and to feel like it's making a difference, I feel really grateful.
Right. Great. And what got you into the world of producing for TV and for radio?
Well, I think I've always loved anything entertainment. I
Mm,
love anything musical, and my son and his fiance actually, love to sing. They've been in a lot of musicals in high school and in college, and I think anything that is special and again that can make a change or be inspirational, I think can make a big difference. And having been a TV producer, I've been so lucky meeting people like Mickey Rooney and Jane
mm,
Fonda and Oprah Winfrey. And,
mm.
it's like people say like, well, what do you do for a living? And, when I tell them, they say, wow. And I said, yeah, and I get paid for doing this.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Okay, so some of our listeners out there, they might think of a TV show or something like that, and they think director, and they are not quite sure what producer does. Just for the sake of those who aren't, clear on the distinction between the two, what would differentiate a producer from a director?
It varies depending on the modem you're talking about, whether you're talking
Mm,
about TV or whether you're talking about film.
okay.
And so I was a TV producer working on a daily talk show called AM San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So the producer would book the guests. We would come up with, write the intros, work on the script,
Mm-hmm.
work closely with the host, and the director was doing more the technical aspect.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, camera one, camera two, do this or do that. And the director would be, sitting in the control room along with the producer.
Mm,
But in TV, a lot of times it is kind of the producer saying, this is what I want to have happen. And the
mm-hmm.
director will take care of some of the technical aspects.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that distinction, because yeah, I'm sure a lot of people aren't really clear on that. So after producing on TV and radio, you now have your own. You're now a publicist, for authors and for, for getting the word out on books. Now, what made you decide? I know you have your own company. I mentioned this earlier, but what made you decide to set up I Am Media?
That's a very good question. And I think I was, again, very blessed in my career. So I worked at Channel 7, which was ABC owned, for over 5 years. And my husband and I decided to do something kind of risky, but really something that changed our life. We decided to go to Europe, and we
Hmm.
were there for 4.5 months.
Hmm.
So we basically sold our house, gave up our jobs, and we would travel through Europe, and people would meet us and say, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a TV producer, but I quit my job to
Hmm.
go to Europe." And people would be like, "You gave up your job as a TV producer?" And sometimes I kind of think to myself, "Did I do the right thing?" And now I know I really did. I mean, just to have that experience, and to travel, meet so many different people around the world. And again, I feel fortunate because having my own business, I have the flexibility to do what I want to do.
Hmm.
And when I decided to leave HarperCollins
Hmm.
many years ago when my son was born, to start my own business. I could work from home,
Hmm.
and so I could help coach his baseball team, and I could be a room mom. And that was 24 years ago. So
Right.
I've been blessed to be able to do something creative and, to make a difference and still be able to do much of what I do working from home.
Mm. And is this essentially the reason why you wanted to become a publicist? I mean, there could have been a whole bunch of other things you could have done.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a very good question. And I know that being a publicist, at one point, it was one of the top careers that you could easily do from home. And when I started, it was just a matter of having a phone and a computer, because
Hmm.
you don't really need a whole lot. Again, I've been very fortunate. I've gotten a lot of great referrals, and it's not like I really have to do much advertising because, I have other authors and people I work with recommending me. And so it's been a really good journey. So definitely, if anyone's looking for a new career,
Hmm.
certainly having been in the communications industry for this many years, I have a lot of great connections, such as you and Alvin, and I just know a lot of producers and editors and reporters, and so that certainly makes a difference, and that certainly helps me get a lot of great bookings and placements for my authors. So certainly having the experience and having the connections is of utmost important. But
Right.
I think just having the passion and the creativity. So anyone starting out, it's a great place. It's a great place to be.
Okay, nice, nice. So, again, another, sorry, Isabel, but I just like another definition of terms because some people might not be aware what exactly a publicist does. I mean, they might have an idea, but it might be wrong. So, can you just tell us a little bit about what a publicist does?
Sure, and it's a very good question because I have a little bit of a funny story. Um, so here I have my own business, and every once in a while I'll do an interview, and so I'm always happy to spread the information around. So one day I was talking to my family and to my brother, and my brother said, "Is what is it exactly that you do?"
Mm-hmm. Right, 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 right.
But to make a long story short, publicity, it's another word for public relations, and
Okay.
it is a way of communicating with the outside world and letting people know about whatever you might be promoting or whatever you want more exposure or interaction with. So mainly, I think because I've been so integral in the publishing business, I work with a lot of authors, and I also do a lot of spirituality, religion, and self-help authors. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was at Harper San Francisco, because we did a lot of religion-based books, that was kind of my ballywick. And so, being spiritual in my own personal life, I feel again it's just an added bonus that I can, really be able to promote, spread the story, and give exposure to really things that could make a big difference in people's lives.
And of course, this is where like all the contacts you build up over years. This is where all this comes in because I'm sure having contacts really helps put the word out.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing we always say. If people will call me to say, hey, I'm interested in working with you, and, how do you run your campaign and what do you do? And I said, once you understand that you like the experience as far as what the person offers, great. But it's really their connections, how long they've been around, being able to open doors. And if people know you, they're more willing to talk to you, or if they know you've given them a good guest in the past. And so a lot of publicity is really nurturing relationships. And
Mm.
that's what makes a big difference in having the media accept your call, and also coming up with sound bites that really work, or that really make a difference. So we had one author who wrote fiction, and fiction is
Hmm.
a little harder to get out there, because it's like, okay, unless you've got this great story, forget it. And so I
Right.
talked to this one author who had written a novel, but talking to her, one of her personal stories was that she had a falling out with her daughter because her daughter fell in love with her boyfriend. And so,
Hmm.
you just look at that and think like, oh my goodness. But yet, it was actually her mom, and she had an affair.
Hmm.
But they came back together again as a family, and that's why she wrote the novel. But it's amazing that a lot of novelists that I've worked with, so much of what they write is inspired by their own life. And so
Mm.
I think that's what makes it a little bit more interesting. And, having been a TV producer all those years, I think I'd mentioned to you that the first question that we would ask is, do you have your own personal story? And
Right.
that's why personal stories make all the difference in the world. So,
Right.
I know you just interviewed one of my other authors, Ellery Akers, the author of Swerve. And
Hmm.
what makes her interesting, she's always been an environmentalist, activist, and artist and writer, but
Hmm.
she told me she lived in a tent for 20 years,
Hmm.
and it wasn't like she was that, 365 days a year, but so much of the year she lived in a tent because she loved being out in nature. She loved, having just this open space. And I said, Ellery, I said, that's really interesting. And so being a good publicist is also being curious, having an
Mm.
interest, always asking questions, and finding out what the unusual and what the motivation is for people, because that's what makes the world go round.
Nice, nice. Yeah, gee, I mean, I have the feeling you'd make a good interviewer, you know?
Well, it's so funny because I would love to do that. And I was even thinking that my column, because it has so many different, people that are making a difference, but that are unusual and unique. And I thought, I think my next step is I interview all the people I'm writing about.
Hmm.
And I always like to do mock interviews with my authors to get them ready. And,
Hmm.
once in a while they'll say, I think you're doing a good job interviewing. And I'm, kind of gives me the idea like, because, a long time ago, the CEO of Women's Radio asked me, well, you host your own show. And I said, I would love to, but it was a stage where my son was still young, and I think he was a toddler. And I said, I just don't have the time. But, now this could be a perfect opportunity to open that door.
Hmm. Nice. Okay, cool. All right, so let's get on to your column. I mean, Wagging Tails, changing lives one tale at a time. It's something that you put out on your Facebook page. First off, why choose Facebook? I mean, usually other platforms like say Blogger, they're more popular. So why choose Facebook?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, and as I go along with this process, I'm learning as well. And just because I already had a Facebook page and I was a
Mm,
little bit more familiar with the platform,
right.
but I really see it as sort of a springboard, because I do have my website, which I want to put this, call it a blog and put this on there. I am also on LinkedIn, and so I'm really going to come up with different platforms. And I figured,
Mm,
just because I knew Facebook, I thought it's a good place to start, but I would really like to expand from there.
nice. Okay, okay, got that. Okay. Next, why Wagging Tails?
Well, here's a little secret, and
Okay.
hope you'll see his picture at some point down the line.
Right.
Um, Certainly, one of the most important guys in my life is my dog, Joey.
Oh.
And so I kind of put two and two together. It's like I wanted to come up with this column. I think because of the pandemic, I was, sort of in the space and having to be socially isolated here in the Bay Area
Mm-hmm.
since March 17th. I was feeling kind of depressed, sad, and like, boy, what can I do? Can I make a difference? Is there anything I can do about the situation we're facing? And, after giving it a lot of thought, I said, you know what? We all could use some more good news.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was amazed after doing some research how much good news was going on, and especially because of this pandemic. And
Mm-hmm.
you simple things like, people shopping for some of the elderly, or even calling a senior citizen to say hello. Just the good deeds going on. It's just been amazing. And what I wanted to do, and I thought what was really important, not just honor people like, let's say, Lady Gaga, who did the whole, concert raising money for the World Health Organization, which is terrific, but
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to honor some of the folks in our community,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe someone who has made a difference, but maybe is not known worldwide. And
Right.
so, just maybe just to, if I can cite some examples, the first honoree was actually my son's high school music teacher,
Oh,
Emily
okay.
Gates. She still teaches after over 50 years of being a music mentor. Some of her students have gone on to Broadway. She's taught an
Mm.
Asian rock star, and you'll never get anybody to say, anything negative about her. She's been such an inspiration, and she leads the Moms Choir, which I'm a part of, called Mondays at 6.
Okay.
And she teaches at San Marin High. And we monthly before the shelter in place, we would go to the local retirement community Atria and sing for them. And so last year during we had a lot of the fires in Northern California,
Mm-hmm.
so we had blackouts, and there were times at 3 or 4 days where you'd have no power. And so
Right.
normally every Monday at the end of the month we would go to Atria to sing. Well, this was one Monday where none of us had electricity, so
Mm-hmm.
we all figured, well, there's no performance today. So we find out the next day that Emily showed up in the dark, played piano, and did a solo performance for the residents. And when we heard that,
Nice.
we said, oh my goodness. So it's people like that. And just to give you a couple of other examples,
Mm.
Leslie Bradley Murphy, she is the CEO of Western Bradley Electric, WBE. And the fact is, she was called one of the top women to own a business in Silicon Valley. But the fact is that her company has been on the top philanthropy list for over 6 years here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Her company spearheads a random act of kindness committee. She
Mm.
has her employees on company time doing all kinds of charitable works. And as a little personal note, my son has good friends with her son, and for
Mm.
his 21st birthday, they treated 14 of his closest friends to an all expense paid trip to Las Vegas. And I just thought, wow.
Nice.
um, and then maybe one coming up for Father's Day. A special kind of father is actually the pastor at Our Lady of Loretto Church in Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
Father Brian Costello. And despite a diagnosis of terminal cancer, he's not going to retire early. He said, all I want to do is I want to make this congregation and this parish a better place. I want to bring us all together, and I want to make a difference in that way. And, I got to say, he's got to be one of the best role models around.
Mm. Okay. Nice. Nice. Okay. Okay. So I mean, you've this essentially sprang out from this what's going on, the pandemic going on right now. What s- how do I put this? What I'm just curious, and this is about good news. So, would you just have any information, how important good news is for people keeping people's spirits up? What's
Yeah,
some things people can get out of it?
yeah, and that's a really good question, Alex. And, um, so I looked up things like the difference between having gratitude during a pandemic, how to fight stress during uncertain times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how looking at the good side of things can make you feel better about yourself and about the world. And it's just really medically proven that
Mm.
having gratitude or doing good deeds, it's good for your health. It's good for your mental health. It's good emotionally and good physically. And there have been studies done, and there's a slew of articles on the internet, whether from Psychology Today, Harvard's Health Blog, Forbes magazine, and even like the New York Times. They're doing a lot of, letting people read the newspaper for free while this pandemic is going on. And so
Mm.
everywhere you look, at every corner, all over the world. And, a lot of my column may focus on maybe more of the community, but
Mm-hmm.
yet I think what is so important, it's the community all across the world. And
Mm.
one of my other things that I wanted to feature is Captain Thomas Moore, who actually is over in Britain, and he is 100-year-old veteran. And he
Mm.
said, I want to raise money to help fight the pandemic. And so he
Right.
says, for his 100th birthday, he wanted to do 100 laps around his backyard. He said, if I can raise £1,000, I'm going to be really happy. Well,
Right.
he ended up raising £23 million. And I think
Nice.
it was the Duke of Cambridge that said he's a one man, self fundraising machine. And so stories like that, whether it's in your community or the community across the miles, it's just wonderful. And the other thing I love is just the diversity of what this column allows me to do. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, another one of our my honorees is Aria Luna, and she is 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She's an artist and an activist and environmentalist, and her art is, helping to say, we have to help the environment. She had a really beautiful display up at Google. She's helped with so many different organizations as far as, helping the ocean stay alive. And she's been so creative. And she's 9 years old. And I'm looking at
Mm-hmm.
this going, if I accomplished anything of what she's accomplished in her 9 years, I would be absolutely thrilled. And and one of my other honorees is Sean Bonnet of the AJJ band. And it's funny because my son's fiance, that's her favorite band. And so normally I wouldn't know much about that, but she
Right.
said he has been doing a show, and complimentary. You just go and tune in every night since the shelter in place started, since March, the middle of March.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called, live from quarantine, and at 7:30 every night. And it's like, the entertainment that's out there, and the fact that so many of the entertainers, whether they're doing it for a charitable cause, whether they're doing it just, to help people feel better about themselves and feel
Mm-hmm.
better about, the good things that are happening. It's pretty amazing.
Wow.
I think the Good News Network, which is a great place to find all this good news, they said, we just don't have enough space for all the good deeds that's
Mm-hmm.
happening. So that's really, that's, I think, what keeps us all going. And
Right.
I just feel, being able to make a difference, whether it's in just a small way or a bigger way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we just really need to look around and say, thank you just for
Mm-hmm.
being our neighbor. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Right. Right. And doing this column, has this affected you in any way? I mean, has it, would you say, made you more positive or something like that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And I think, it kind of started out certainly feeling like, what can I do? There's always that feeling of helplessness. And the first weekend that we sheltered in place, it's like, I'm going to write a letter to the president, and I'm going to say, can you please do everything you can to get us the protective medical equipment? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
the other thing with my column. I want to be able to honor the healthcare heroes. And one of my honorees was Dr. David Price, and he
Mm-hmm.
put out a simple 10-minute video about how to protect yourself during this crisis. And he's on the front lines of fighting COVID-19 every
Right.
day. And just the fact to know, hey, if you protect yourself, if you're careful, if you are knowledgeable, you can feel empowered, because it's a time, we're obviously fearful. It's it's, we're not sure how we're going to take our next step. How are we going to go
Right.
back to work and protect ourselves? And so I felt like he really went out of his way to let people know that you can protect yourself. And,
Hmm.
it's not everybody's going to get this. And even if you get this, not everybody gets really ill from it. And so
Yeah.
I think just to hear that reassurance is really important.
Right. Okay. Well, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Okay. So, Isabella, let's say there's someone who, I mean, we're talking about the pandemic here. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty going on right now. But let's say you came across someone who wanted to help out in some way, but they're not quite sure on how to do it. How to go about it. What would be a couple of things you might suggest to that person so they can help out?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So, like, if I look at my personal situation, in addition to being a publicist, I also have found something I truly love. It's doing tour guiding in San Francisco. And
Hmm.
one of the companies I work with is called Local Taste of the City. And, my main tour was doing the Chinatown food tour, which has been a real blast. And so, companies like that, we're all trying to be creative how we can make a new, business platform or find a new way to do what we're doing in the industry. And so something like I'm a member of the San Francisco Tour Guide Guild. Every day they're putting out information about how you can help others or what's going to make a difference in our industry or,
Hmm.
what we can do to reach out. And, especially being a tour guide and just getting people from all over the world that were coming to San Francisco, it's been a great boon to see this ongoing, posting of what we can do to make a difference. And so,
Mm.
so I would go in your own just world and, like if, certainly there's so many ideas if you just simply Google it, that
Mm.
it's amazing what you come up with. But, whether it's, if in your local community, whether you call a city hall, whether you call your church, whether, there's so many different great organizations. I also am a Richmond specialist for the YMCA teaching kindergartners. And so there's a lot of different organizations, you see about them all the time, whether it's UNICEF, whether it's Salvation Army. So there's always ways you can help. And the
Mm.
great thing about it is there's a lot of ways to help from home while you're sheltered in place. Again, even if you have just the phone, you can call a senior citizen and just be a companion for them.
Mm.
And certainly I think it's important to remember, certainly monetary donations are always helpful. If you are one of the lucky ones and you didn't get laid off and you're still working, that's certainly helpful. And I know there's always a big need to have blood donations during this time. So
Mhm.
again, the list is, amazing. And I think too, think about what talents you have to offer. I'm very lucky because my son is very musical, and once a year we have this intergenerational sensation concert at his high school, and he'll perform, whether it's one of my original songs or we would do something together. But
Right.
during this time, I'm thinking, hey, maybe I'll, start doing my guitar more, writing more songs. And
Mhm.
people out there are so talented. It's amazing what they can come up with. I had another friend who said, I'm going to start working on a screenplay or, and so think about the talents you have and what
Mhm.
you can share. And, maybe one of these days I'll come up with a new column and get, people to send in, what are you doing during the pandemic with your family and what can you share to make others feel better? And, the same way, it's like people that love animals. I don't know if you've heard about him or her. Her name is Pluto, but the owner basically had her talking about the pandemic and how looking at it through a dog's eyes, and she would say, "Well, I know this is a very upsetting thing for our two-legged friends, and we need to watch out for them." But it was just really hilarious how the owner put this all together, and I
Mhm.
think it's gotten over like 4 million views, and so it's great what's out there. And I feel blessed that, at a time that has been so difficult and certainly one of the toughest times in history, the fact that we have social media, that we have the ways that people can get connected, it's pretty amazing. Because, when you think about our last pandemic, 1918, there was like the newspaper and radio. So it wasn't like today where we can really feel connected, and to have platforms like Zoom and GoToMeeting and WebEx, it's pretty amazing, the connections and the lifelines we have available to us.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, very good points right there. Okay, now, Isabella, in the last minute or so of this interview, I mean, I wish we could talk more, but, we're kind of winding down right now. In this last minute or so of this interview, is there any one major piece of advice that you'd like to leave our audience or our listeners with?
Yes, I think what is so important is never give up hope. Always try to look at the positive, and just know there's people out there. We're all in this together. And I think the one reminder that I'd like to leave everyone with is that we're all in this together. We're certainly not on our own. But remember that there's one important person to take care of. And if you think about, and I read it at the Harvard Health blog, it's like, well, remember when you're on the airplane and the oxygen mask comes down because there's some kind of an emergency,
Right.
they always say, put your oxygen mask on first and then help others. And so in order to be able to help others, you've got to take care of yourself first, and then you help as many people as you can.
All right. Okay. Well, definitely. I mean, you can't help someone else if you're in kind of like in trouble yourself.
Absolutely.
All right. Cool. Okay. So, all right then. So, in closing, then the Facebook column is Wagging Tails, changing lives one tale at a time, and the authors, our guest, Isabella Michon. So yeah, okay. So to get to the column, just go on to Facebook and search for Isabella Michon, and you're gonna get it. Is that correct, Isabella?
Yes, and so
All right.
Isabella just spelled like the Queen. Michon is Michon.
Right.
And certainly I would love it if people, whether they're inspired by this interview, whether they're inspired to help others, and if they're already helping people, I would love to hear your story, because I would love to do a shout out as well. And also, if you want to check out the website, it is I am, like in Mary, publicity.com. So I'd love to hear from you on whatever platform. And again, thank you, Alex, for this opportunity. It's really been a blessing and a real joy to have joined you today.
Well, you're welcome very much, Isabella. Thank you very much for being on AuthorStory. All right, so then everyone check out Wagging Tails on Isabella's Facebook page, and also go ahead and check out all the other great authors we've already covered, and by all means subscribe to listen to the authors and stories we'll cover in the future.